Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Certificate Programs, Certificate in Nutrition and Child Care, CNCC-2 Organizing Child Care Services, BLOCK-2, The Child, Development in the First 12-Month, Unit-8, Cognitive Development, The Emergence of Thought. 8.1, Introduction. At birth the child does not know about the people and the world around her. She is not aware of what she can do. In this unit we will read how the infant develops an understanding about herself, people and things. We will also read how her thinking capacities evolve during the first year of life. Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to explain the meaning of the term cognition and understand that learning, memory, reasoning, symbolizing and concept formation are aspects of cognition. Understand that the child's mind is active from birth onwards. Explain the meaning of the term sensory-motor period. Describe the stages in the development of thought in the first year. State how heredity and environment influence cognitive development. Understand the importance of the caregiver's role in the infant's mental development. 8.2 What is cognition? As a newborn, Ramesh would suck on anything that was brought to his mouth: the pacifier, the finger, the mother's breast. His mother would often give him a pacifier to suck when he cried. By 1 month of age, Ramesh would not suck on the pacifier if it was given to him when he was hungry. Instead he would spit it out. He would, however, take the breast. This showed that he had learned what provided food and what did not. In other words, the child had learned to discriminate between the mother's breast and its substitute, the pacifier. 9-month-old Tina is very attached to her father and is possessive about his belongings, particularly his sandals. If she sees anyone else wearing his sandals, she pulls at them to lick them away. The child has learned to associate the sandals with the father, that is, she remembers that they are his. When she was around 18 months old, she would often take her father's lunchbox from the kitchen and would say, "Tata, Tata." The child had seen her father doing this and was enacting the same. In her imitation of his behavior, memory is involved. At 11 months, Mansoor is able to crawl and can pull himself to standing position. One day he spotted a box lying on a table nearby. He crawled to the table, pulled himself upright and tried to reach for the box. But the table was high and he could not get to it. He gave up after some time and crawled to his mother, who had been watching him. She picked him up, went to the table and gave him the toy. Mansoor was delighted. 2 months later he began to walk. Now when he wanted the toy from the table, he would go up to the table and get it. In both instances, the child solved the problem. In the first case he got his mother to help him. In the second instance he had worked out how he could get the toy and carried out his plan effectively. Ila is an active 15-month-old infant. She and her father were lying on the bed one day when Ila bit him quite fiercely on the arm. Ila's father pretended to be hurt, turned his face away from Ila and cried out, "Ooh, ooh." Ila's mother said in mock anger, "You have hurt people." The child looked at her father for a while, then went over to him and started kissing him on his face and arms and calling out to him. It is clear that the child thought that her father was hurt and reasoned that she could placate him by kissing him. Clearly, she is imitating the consoling she gets when she is hurt. These examples show that from the earliest months, infants understand what is happening around them. You will be able to think of similar incidents from your observations. The mental activities that have been illustrated in the examples: learning through association and discrimination, remembering, problem solving, imitating, reasoning, understanding what is expected of one are all aspects of cognition or intelligence. Besides these mental processes, cognition also involves concept formation and symbolizing. What do we mean by these terms? Concepts are ways of organizing information. They help us to group or categorize information. A concept develops out of characteristics that are common to a set of objects, actions or thoughts. For example, we have a concept of edible and inedible things. We may further categorize edible things as fruits, vegetables, cereals, bread, nuts, and so forth. In the same way, we have concepts of living and non-living things. Shapes, colors, seasons, work, play, and so on. Researchers have tried to determine how early in life children begin to form concepts. Symbolizing means representing an event, object, action, quality, or concept by something else, i.e. the symbol. This symbol then stands for that particular event or object. For example, the symbol ## on the road signifies that there is a railway track ahead. The red cross symbolizes hospitals. Words are symbols that stand for actual objects and events. When the preschooler pretends that the wooden block is a bus and plays with it, she is symbolizing. When Bala was 2 years old, her grandmother, Nani, came to visit her in the village. When she was leaving, the entire family, including Bala, went to see her off at the bus stop. From then on, whenever Bala would see the bus coming into the village, she would say, "Nani, come." For Bala, the bus symbolized her grandmother's visit. You have probably grasped by now that cognition is concerned with how we come to know the world around us. Each one of us has our own ideas about people and events. How do we form these ideas and beliefs? How does knowledge develop? Cognition deals with the development of thought and knowledge. Thinking or cognition has to do with how we receive and interpret information and how we use it to guide further actions. One may ask why the development of cognitive abilities must be studied. The development of cognition enables the individual to adapt to surroundings and situations. With the development of thought, the person is able to understand and handle situations with greater effectiveness. Therefore, it is important to know about the stage in cognitive development and understand how we can stimulate the child's thinking. Check your progress. 1. From your observation of an infant, write an anecdote which illustrates any one cognitive process. 2. What do you understand by the term cognition? 8.3. Thought in the first year. Let us read how thought develops from the time the child is born. When we talk about cognitive development, we must remember the name of Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget. He studied how children come to understand people and events. Can young infants learn? In what way do infants and children show their intelligence? Does the child's thinking change over time? Piaget's research focused on such issues. He stated that children view the world and understand events in a way which is different from that of adults. Their logic is different from that of adults. The nature of children's thinking changes from one age to the next. Piaget, in his theory of cognitive development, describes these changes. As the child grows, not only does her store of information increase, but the manner in which she thinks also changes. At successive ages, her thought is qualitatively different from the earlier ages. Piaget stated that the development of thinking proceeds through 4 stages. The first stage lasts till 2 years of age and is the sensory-motor period of development. The second stage, from 2 to 6 years, is the pre-operational stage. The third stage, from 7 to 11 years, is the concrete operational stage, and from 12 years onwards, the child enters the stage of formal operations. Since at each of these stages the child has a different way of understanding events, it is not correct to say that a 2-year-old is less intelligent than a 6-year-old. One of the major sources of data for Piaget, as he was formulating his theory of cognitive development, was his observations of these 3 children. While discussing cognitive development in this unit and others, we shall draw upon Piaget's recordings of his children's activities as well as those of other children to describe the changes in thinking that occur with age.
Let us now read about the development of thinking during the first year, i.e. the sensory-motor period. 8.3.1 The sensory-motor stage. As the term suggests, in this stage the child understands the world using her senses and motor capacities. She comes to know about things in terms of what her senses convey and what children do with them, motor capacities. Thus the infant knows a wooden block, 4. I, in terms of how it feels to her touch and appears to her eyes, I sensory information, and that she can throw it, kick it, push it and bang it, lay motor capacities. She cannot think of its properties, such as solid, wooden, color, in adult terms because she does not yet have these concepts. In other words, the infant at this stage cannot think conceptually, i.e. in terms of concepts. To find out about things, the infant has to act upon them, i.e. feel them, explore them, do something with them. Even adults first look at a new object and then feel it. But adults and older children do not rely merely upon the information from the senses to understand events or objects. They also categorize information into concepts, think in abstract terms and reason. The infant begins to develop concepts towards the end of the second year. During the sensory motor period, thinking develops gradually, and by the end of the stage, the infant understands that her actions can have an effect on people and objects. She can plan her actions and solve simple problems, as Mansoor did in obtaining the toy. This period is divided into 6 substages. In this unit we will talk about the first 4 substages that emerge in the first year. The remaining 2 substages will be discussed in the next block. The first substage lasts from birth to 1 month. During this stage, the newborn adapts to her surroundings through her reflexes. For example, when the baby feels hungry, she cries, and when her mouth touches the nipple, she begins to suck. Sucking is a reflex at this stage. You have read about other reflexes in Unit 7. The foundations of later learning are laid now as the baby modifies and adapts her reflexes. Let us take the example of sucking to understand this. One of the first things that the baby sucks on is the mother's breast. Later she sucks at other objects as well, the finger, the pacifier or the corner of her sheet. This is the beginning of generalization. Generalizing is an important part of cognitive development. It helps the child to form concepts. For example, by sucking on different things, i.e., by generalizing sucking to various objects, the child will develop an idea of things that give nourishment on sucking and those that do not, i.e., develop a concept of food and non-food. From a few exposures to a sound, the infant gradually develops a concept of that sound. The jingling of bangles will quieten a crying child who has learned to associate the source of the bangles with the mother's presence. Concepts are thus developed as the baby generalizes information. In the above example, the baby generalizes that the sound of bangles signifies the presence of the mother. By sucking, the infant also learns to discriminate. Discrimination in a mental activity, which is basic to development. To discriminate is to see the difference between two objects or experiences. When sucking at the breast, the baby learns whether to suck slowly or with force, depending upon how hungry she is and how much milk she gets. She discriminates between objects that provide nourishment and those that do not, and thus may refuse a pacifier when hungry, just as Ramesh did in the anecdote described earlier. In fact, infants find out about objects by mouthing them. They find out how they feel and taste. This is a major way of learning about objects during the first year of life. The second substage lasts from the beginning of the second month to 4 months. During this period, babies begin to show interest in their surroundings, which leads them to explore. Since at this time the infant is not able to move about physically, the process of knowing about the surroundings is in the form of visual exploration. They now spend less time sleeping, and when alert they scan their environment. How do we know that infants attend to objects? When the infant is attracted towards an object, she will look at it attentively for some time as if she wants to learn all she can about it. She may also smile at it. You know that infants look longer at objects that have a light and dark contrast and those that move. They show more interest in unfamiliar objects compared to familiar ones. That the infant is able to make out that a particular object/person/picture is unfamiliar indicates that she is using her memory. It shows that she remembers a face, recalls it, compares it with the new face and concludes that the latter is unfamiliar. This is a remarkable feat. You have just read that infants find out about objects by mouthing them. Another way they learn about objects is by touching them. Touch delights them from the moment they swipe at objects and hold their legs. In fact, one of the first things that the baby explores are her own hands. She notices her hands, plays with and stares at them for long periods. This activity interests the baby as her fist is not clenched all the time now. The fingers and the thumb provide interesting variety in movement. You can see how all the senses help the child to learn about her surroundings. While the infant recognizes familiar people and voices, she does not yet recognize her own name when called out. If it seems that the baby is looking around when her name is called, it is so because she recognizes the intonation. If any word in the same intonation is called out, she will still respond by looking at the person. At this age, the child is also able to anticipate an event based on the actions of others. You may have seen that a 3-month-old infant is able to make out from the actions and speech of the mother that she is about to be fed, and begins to make sucking movements and to adjust her posture to the mother's body. This shows that the infant remembers that certain actions of the mother will lead to feeding, another evidence of her growing memory. The infant begins to coo at this age, and if the adult utters a similar sound, she responds and often continues it. This is an example of imitation. Through imitation, children and adults acquire many skills throughout the lifespan, and the beginnings of imitation can be seen now. By the time the infant enters the third substage, 4 to 8 months, she is able to grasp objects, push them, kick them and manipulate them. She is able to know things happen and acquires new actions that produce interesting results on objects. Let us understand this through an example. While lying in the crib, the infant kicks and moves her arms. One such movement accidentally moved the doll hanging by a string from her crib. Delighted at this movement, the infant looks intently at the doll for some time. She moves her arms again, which in turn moves the doll. She begins to perceive some connection between her action and its consequence. Fascinated with the result of her action, the baby continues the kicking and looks at the doll every time it moves. In the earlier stages too, the doll may have moved when the child moved her arms, but she had not perceived the link between her movement and that of the doll. Her delight, her intent expression and her repetition of the action show that she has now made the connection. Once the infant realizes that her actions have an effect on objects, her actions become intentional, i.e., purposeful. Intention means that the child has a wish to do something before she does it, i.e., the child knows what she wants to do. Not only does the infant swing her arms to move the doll, but she varies the force with which she moves them. She begins by swinging her arms gently and then continues more strongly, delighting as the doll moves with greater force. This newfound interest in objects and the consequences of her actions will grow during the subsequent years and form the basis of her learning. Let us take another situation to show that now the infant performs actions with an intention. You may have often been involved in an activity with the child in which she drops her toy on the floor. You give it back to her only to have her drop it again. And she continues doing so as long as you keep handing it back to her. You may lose patience, but the child enjoys herself immensely. The activity of dropping the toy got an interesting result the first time, and the infant repeats it. Many actions of the child have a consequence, and she gradually perceives the connection between her own activity and its result. In other words, she begins to understand cause and effect relationships. The emergence of intention in the infant's actions is an important landmark from the point of view of cognitive development. Most of our actions have an intention; they are performed with a purpose. Once the child begins to act intentionally, her actions tend to be under her control. This gives her confidence that she can control some aspects of her environment. Being able to perform actions intentionally leads to goal-directed behavior. What is meant by goal-directed behavior? This means being able to use one's actions to reach an end or a goal, i.e., to use one's actions as a means to an end. In performing goal-directed behavior, one needs to plan a strategy and then carry it out. Goal-directed behavior marks the beginning of the fourth substage, which lasts from 8 to 12 months. From the point of view of problem solving, this stage is an important landmark. Let us see the origin of goal-directed behavior in the infant through the following example. The child tries to reach for a box lying some distance from her. As she reaches for it, her mother places a cushion between her and the box so that the child is prevented from reaching the box. To get the box, the child must set aside the cushion. The child at once strikes the cushion down, lowers it and clears her way. When her mother holds the cushion firmly in place, the child pushes it harder to remove it. In the earlier stages, when such an obstacle had intervened between the child and the object she wanted, the child had simply ignored the obstacle or tried to pass through the side, but she did not try to displace it. The hallmark of the fourth substage is that the infant is now able to combine two or more actions to reach a goal. In the above example, the infant combined the actions of pushing aside something with grasping to attain her goal, i.e., the box. The intention in actions which could be seen in the third substage is stronger now. Other situations that bring out the infant's goal-directed behavior are putting objects into containers and taking them out, using the help of adults to get something, as Mansoor did. In another instance, an infant wanted to move a doll, but she was not able to get it swinging herself. The child grasped her father's hand, placed it against the doll and exerted pressure on his fingers to make him swing it. Development of physical skills like sitting, rolling over, standing, crawling and holding objects help the infant in goal-directed behavior. At this time, the infant also begins to understand that objects occupy some position in space and that they can be moved around. When an obstacle, such as a small wooden plank, comes between her and the toy, the infant knows that the obstacle will have to be moved or that she will have to move around the obstacle to reach the toy. You know that the child is aware that her actions can affect objects and people. During this stage, she also realizes that actions of others can also have an effect on things. Therefore, she now approaches the adult to help her get the object which she cannot reach and begins to seek out adults to solve situational problems. You may have observed a 10-month-old baby staring at small pieces lying on the floor such as crumbs, threads and even particles of sand. What is more astonishing is that she manages to pick up these objects as well. This shows the infant's ability to see details. The child's memory also grows. She can now remember more events and can recall them quite clearly. Therefore, she is able to anticipate that an event is going to happen again based upon the cues. This is a more developed version of anticipation of events discussed in the earlier part of the unit through Ambika's example. Ambika had often seen that after the sound of the scooter in the veranda, the father appears at the door. Now when she hears the scooter, she looks towards the door eagerly anticipating her father's appearance. What does this discussion tell us about the infant? From her first experience, the infant understands, remembers and organizes information and acts upon the environment to achieve a goal. The infant is intelligent. By acting upon the objects in the environment, she learns the reasons for everyday events. For example, objects can be moved by pushes and kicks. By touching, feeling, seeing, smelling and hearing, she learns about the properties of various objects and forms a concept of them. She also begins to understand the meaning of commonly used words such as milk, bottle and ball. She recognizes her mother, father and people with whom she interacts daily and can distinguish between familiar and unfamiliar people. Similarly, she distinguishes known from unknown objects. By acting upon things, she also develops an idea of what she is capable of doing. She is as yet not able to think in terms of concepts and cannot represent objects and people in the form of symbols in her mind. This will come later. How can we gauge the infant's intelligence? As far as adults and older children are concerned, we can generally assess their intelligence by how they handle problems and complex situations. But what do we look for in an infant? To gauge the infant's intelligence, we have to look at the development of her senses and motor skills. Her intelligence can be seen in everything she does: focusing, following a moving object, reaching for objects, kicking, banging, squeezing and thumping play objects. How well she anticipates events is also an aspect of intelligent functioning. The achievements of the 1-year-old, such as being able to move a rattle, grasp a bowl or imitate a sound, may seem rather simple when compared with the 3-year-old who knows names of people, talks with them and understands a great deal. However, the abilities of the 1-year-old are important accomplishments and the basis of all later development. Check your progress. 1. Describe the salient characteristics of each of the 4 substages of the sensory motor period. A. First substage. B. Second substage. C. Third substage. D. Fourth substage. 2. With reference to cognitive development, what is the child able to do by the first year? 8.4. The role of the caregiver. In Unit 3 you read that heredity determines one's potential for intelligence while the opportunities provide the setting for the achievement of this potential. In other words, how much of the inborn traits are developed depends upon environmental factors. Thus, the development of intelligence depends upon the interaction between heredity and environment. What the child inherits in terms of intelligence cannot be changed, but we can certainly influence the type of experiences that a child will have. Therefore, in this section, we will concentrate upon a major aspect in the infant's environment. I.E. The caregiver. Providing stimulating experiences to the child is normally the responsibility of the family. You have already read about the role of the caregiver in Unit 5. Let us discuss age here with reference to the child under the age of 1. Since the infant is not mobile, she is able to explore only those things that are within her immediate reach and range of vision. Those who are looking after the infant must be sensitive towards this aspect and give her a variety of things to play with. Just as the infant needs to handle objects to learn about them, she also needs to interact with people. The family members must spend time with the child and play with her and talk freely to her. By interacting with people, she understands concepts and gathers information. This will also help her to understand her experiences. When the infant becomes 8 to 9 months old, parents delight in showing her new objects and directing her attention towards them. This also helps her to learn about things. To summarize, the role of caregivers lies in providing the infant stimulating experiences in keeping with her abilities. While we have spoken about how adults can foster development, we must not forget the child's own role in her development. The child is not a passive person who just takes in her experiences. If this were so, all children who have similar experiences would turn out to be alike. There are innate constitutional differences among children which makes them different even in the same situation. The child is an active being who responds to events around her. How the child interprets a particular experience will depend upon her past experiences and a variety of individual factors. Check your progress. 1. In what ways can caregivers promote cognitive development? 8.5. Summing up. In this unit you have read how the child's thinking capabilities develop during the first year of life. Cognitive development is concerned with how the child comes to know about her surroundings and how her thinking becomes more complex with time. Cognitive development refers to the development of thinking capacities. Cognition involves many mental processes: learning, memory, symbolizing, concept formation, reasoning, discrimination, association, imitation and problem solving. Piaget was concerned with how the TIC develops knowledge of ordinary things and everyday situations, and he propounded a theory of cognitive development. As the infant grows, her thinking changes, so that at each age level the nature of the child's thought is different. At each stage the child deals with situations in keeping with her level of thinking. As she grows, the infant also gains more information about her surroundings. The first stage in cognitive development, according to Piaget, is the sensory-motor period, which lasts till 2 years of age. During this period, the infant understands events and experiences using her senses and motor capacities. She is not able to think in terms of concepts. By the end of this period, the infant develops a fairly good understanding of her surroundings. She recognizes many people, understands that her actions can have an effect, and develops an idea of what she is capable of doing. Memory grows, language develops, and the infant is able to plan her actions. She learns why things happen the way they do and forms an idea about the world around her. The sensory-motor period is divided into 6 substages, 4 of which have been discussed in this unit. During the first substage, from birth to 1 month, the infant is able to use her reflexes, and an elementary form of learning begins through generalization and discrimination. During the second substage, from 1 to 4 months, the infant begins to show curiosity and visually explores the surroundings. She begins to discriminate between familiar and unfamiliar people. She also imitates some actions. During the third substage, 4 to 8 months, the infant seems to realize that her actions can have an effect on people and things. Her actions become intentional. and she understands cause and effect relationships. The fourth substage, 8 to 12 months, is characterized by the infant's ability to perform goal-directed behavior. She now combines 2 or more actions purposefully to achieve a goal. Heredity and environment interact to influence cognitive development. Heredity determines one's potential for intelligent functioning, while how much of the potential is achieved will depend on the experiences of the child. Therefore, the role of the caregiver is of importance since she provides stimulating and meaningful experiences.
8.6 Glossary Ku, the vowel-like sound 000 which the infant begins to produce around 1 month of age. Discriminate, to recognize or understand the difference between, distinguish, differentiate. Pacifier, a baby's teething ring. Predisposed, susceptible, inclined towards. Thank you, we will see you in the next video.